Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's recap of the Expanse Season 3. In this video, I will recap in detail the events of Season 3. This video will not feature any commentary or my opinion on the Expanse. It's just here to recap the events of Season 3. It's not recommended that this video be watched instead of watching Season 3, as I would strongly recommend that if you haven't seen Season 3 yet, to instead watch that, as this video will feature heavy spoilers. It's more here to refresh your memory of the events of Season 3 in preparation for Season 4. Now, if you would like a recap of Seasons 1 and 2, I have recorded one several years ago. I will link to that video in the description of this video if you'd like to be caught up on the first two seasons before getting caught up on the third. Also, another disclaimer that neither this video nor the one I did for the first two seasons are brief recaps. These videos are intended to be very detailed recaps, so they go for as long as they go. I don't try to condense it into like 6 or 10 minutes, as I want to adequately recap the events that occurred. So if it ends up being an hour long, so be it. If you would like to see a shorter recap, there's plenty of other ones on the web. There was an official one narrated by Kevin Smith that I found quite funny, and I'd recommend that. Anyway, I'm going to jump straight into the events of Season 3 and assume that you're all caught up on Seasons 1 and 2. And if not, again, check out my recap for those seasons. So, Season 3 begins with news reports that make it clear that with the destruction of the Abergast over Venus, which was visible to anyone with a telescope, news of the protomolecule has gone public. Meanwhile, tensions has increased between Earth and Mars with the destruction of the Martian ship over Ganymede. In the Situation Room on Earth, Ehrenreich tries to convince Secretary General Gillis to go to war with Mars, blaming them for the rising tension, which really is his fault because he destroyed the Martian ship. Gillis is hesitant at first, but eventually is persuaded to officially declare war on Mars. On the Rosinante, the crew is divided over the news that Naomi gave the protomolecule to Fred Johnson, as the others interact with her as only as far as their duties are concerned. Holden gets news that Earth and Mars are officially at war, which means the Rosinante is a target for either side and isn't safe. So they decide to wipe clean any indicators that the ship is the Rosinante, and they officially rename it the Pinus Contorta, a name suggested by Prax. Naomi goes to Alex and Amos and suggests that they go to Tycho Station, warning that they need to dock immediately, as being in open space, it's only a matter of time before they get killed. They are resistant to her at first, as they are still mad at her, but she convinces them that Johnson is the only one they can trust not to sell them out, and she also tells them that once they go to Tycho, they never have to see her again, and that convinces them, and Alex goes to Holden and convinces him to go to Tycho as well, stating that Johnson is the devil that they know. Back on Earth, Ehrenreich gets news that Avasarala was not killed, and so he orders a UN ship to go after Jules Pierre Mal's yacht, where she is still on board, and destroy it. To further cover his tracks, Ehrenreich goes to Secretary General Gillis and convinces him that Avasarala was the one working with Jules Pierre Mal on the protomolecule project, and that she's the traitor, and that currently she disappeared to go meet Jules Pierre Mal in space. Meanwhile, on Mal's yacht, Avasarala is still trapped in Mal's meeting room while her agent Cotillard has been shot. Bobby Draper, however, is in her Martian battle armor, and she goes out and clears the way of combatants. Avasarala tells her they need to secure control of the ship, so Draper goes and retrieves the tech named Theo that helped her escape before, and they ask for his help in securing the ship. They go to the bridge where 2 men are there, and they surrender, but they booby-trap the entrance, and that disables Draper's suit as soon as she enters. But Cotillard is ready for them and shoots them both. When she comes to, they find that a UN ship has fired a missile at them, which will destroy them in less than an hour. So Cotillard and Draper suggest retreat, but Avasarala refuses to go, as she wants to capture the recording that Ehrenreich sent her, where he confessed his involvement in the protomolecule project as evidence of his treachery. Over Cotillard and Draper's objections, Avasarala convinces Theo to retrieve the evidence. Running out of time, Cotillard recalls that Mal's bodyguard mentioned that they had Mal's daughter's racing ship on board, so they decide to escape in that. However, when they go to enter the docking bay, they find themselves locked out and can't enter. So Draper, in her battlesuit, decides to exit the ship and crawl on the exterior to enter the bay from the outside. She manages to crawl to the docking bay and opens it from the outside. However, they discover that the racing ship can only carry 2 people when there's 4 of them. Cotillard, who's wounded, decides that he can't go because his wounds would worsen at high G, so he tells Bobby Draper to take Avasarala on the racing pinnace and get away while he and Theo escape on the dropship. Draper has to coach Avasarala to prepare for a high G ride, as the racing ship is capable of going up to 6 Gs, and they make it away just in time before Mal's yacht is destroyed. Back on the Rosinante, Holden finds it difficult dealing with the fact that Naomi betrayed him, and after she tries to be nice to him, he destroys the coffee machine in frustration. Prax witnesses it and insists that he should switch to tea instead. Holden then tries to console Prax by saying that the protomolecule hybrid was not his daughter, but Prax says that he has come to terms with the fact that he may never learn what happened to his daughter. Holden does some investigating and discovers that the exact moments they destroyed the protomolecule hybrid with their drive was at the same moment that the hourglass was ripped apart over Venus, and at that same moment he detected another spike coming from Io, where Jules Pierre Mal owns an abandoned mining facility there, which would indicate that that may be where May is being held. Holden brings this up to the crew, and Naomi insists that they not change their plans, that they still go to Tycho, but Holden insists that he doesn't care about eliminating the protomolecule anymore. He accepts that it's out there, but he had promised Prax to find his daughter and has done nothing to do so, while Prax is the reason that he's alive, so he vows to go to Io to find his daughter. Naomi loudly objects, but is overruled by Alex and Amos, who both side with Holden, and they set a course to Io. On the Razorback, Draper has the ship lay dormant out of fear of being detected by the UN battlecruiser. However, it doesn't work, and the UN ship detects their ship anyway, so Draper fires up the engines and flies at high speeds. However, Avasarala's life signs start to waver as the high G is too much for her body to take, so Draper has to slow the ship down out of fear of stroking Avasarala out. Avasarala suggests they call for help, but Draper says the ship comms were locked out, so Avasarala asks if Draper has something on her suit that can send out a signal, and she says that she does, a low-powered IFF signal that can only be retrieved by other Martians. Draper warns against it, as the Martians would arrest them, but Avasarala points out that the UN are trying to kill them, so being arrested is better than being dead, so Draper sends the signal. While on their way to Io, Alex detects the IFF signal and suggests that they go and help them. Naomi detects that the signal is coming from Julie Mal's ship, implying this may be somehow tied to the protomolecule situation. So Alex goes to set a course, but Holden overrules him, saying that they're there to find Prax's daughter, not to get involved in the Earth and Mars war. Alex insists that he feels it's his duty to rescue the 2 VIPs in danger, and Naomi wants to investigate the Razorback, but Holden and Amos say no, so that finding Prax's daughter is more important. So they have a tie. So they then turn to Prax to break the tie. On Io, we see Dr. Strickland revive May from her cyber sleep so she can be used in his experiments. He tries to comfort her, but she can tell that something's wrong. She then, gets put into a group of children, and she reunites with her friend Katoa, who's very excited and says he's feeling better than ever. He then shows her something cool by showing her that his arm is glowing blue. Little does he know he's being turned into a protomolecule hybrid. Meanwhile, Jules Pierre Mal arrives on Io, where Strickland tries to win him over, but Jules Pierre Mal is in a very grumpy mood. he seems to be doubting the project and warns that if Ehrenreich gets a hold of the hybrids, that he'll use them to lay waste to Mars. Strickland tries to reassure him that that scenario is very unlikely, but Mal seems dubious until Strickland tells him about the children with the immune deficiency that allows them to override the protomolecule, and Strickland states it could be the key to stopping what's happening on Venus, so Mal tells him to do what he has to. On Earth, we meet Anna Volovadov, also known as Pastor Anna. Anna is a pastor who runs a relief effort to help those in need. She's called to the UN by Secretary General Gillis, as she used to be his speechwriter. There are massive protests outside the UN building over the war, and a protester is injured near Anna, and she risks herself trying to help him, and then uses her VIP status to order a soldier to take the protester to receive medical attention. She then arrives to reunite with Gillis, who tries to convince her to come back on board as a speechwriter. Anna says no, as the two of them parted on bad terms, but Gillis promised to fully fund her relief effort for a year if she agrees to help. Anna then consults her wife about it, and she suggests to do so Anna agrees, but not before saying goodbye to their daughter. At an official meeting, Anna meets Ehrenreich and the other officials that work for Gillis, and they talk and laugh about how they're going to go after Jules Pierre Mal's family in order to get to him. Anna finds this behavior appalling and gets into an argument with Ehrenreich over it, and the two of them begin to instantly dislike each other. On the Razorback, Draper finds out that they're out of tricks and are about to be destroyed, but then they are saved at the last minute by the Rosnate that fires missiles around them in order to protect them from the UN missiles, as apparently Pratt voted to rescue the VIPs on the Razorback. The battle is tricky, as Holden describes that they're punching above their weight, so he suggests a really risky maneuver to Alex, who manages to execute it, and they shear the UN's battlecruiser's engines shear off, disabling it. Alex celebrates, but Holden is a downer, saying that they're all out of ammo in the middle of a war zone and that they just declared war on Earth. They then dock with the Razorback to rescue its passengers and are shocked to see Bobby Draper holding a very injured Christian Avasarala, whom they do recognize as a high-ranking UN official. We then go to the UNN Agatha King, commanded by Admiral Souther. We see Souther confer with his two most trusted lieutenants, Lieutenant Schaefer and Mancuso, just as the Agatha King is about to pick up the dropship containing Kotar and Theo. They review a message from Fleet Admiral Wynne, who informs Souther not to question the prisoner until he arrives. And Schaefer finds it beyond bizarre that Wynne is going all the way to them just for this. On the dropship, Kotar knows they're about to be captured, so he kills Theo in order to prevent him from talking, as he knows Theo would be easy to break. Wynne then arrives on the Agatha King and informs Souther that Avasarala is a traitor who's been working with Jules Pierre Mal, and the prisoner may know of her whereabouts, and then he demands to question the prisoner, and Souther asks to come with him, and Wynne agrees. In the med bay, they question Kotar, who is very uncooperative, and suggests Ehrenreich was a traitor working with Mal, and Wynne dismisses his claims as lies, but Souther is not so convinced. Later, Souther gets Mancuso to fake a power outage so he can talk to Kotar alone, and he tells Kotar that Avasarala is a patriot and he doesn't believe that she'd betray Earth. Kotar tells him everything about how they were betrayed by Ehrenreich, and Souther concludes that Wynne must be working with Ehrenreich as well. However, Wynne discovers what Souther's doing, but when he goes to the med base, Souther's gone, so he can't prove it, but he knows Souther's on to him, so he relieves him of command of the Agatha King. On the Rosnate, Draper gets upset over seeing how Amos defaced the Martian flag and threatens to take over the ship, but Naomi muses that she would fail. However, when Holden shows up, Draper asks how Avasarala is doing, and Holden says that she's tough, she'll make it. She then asks Holden to take them to the nearest port, but he refuses, saying that the ship is going to Io. Draper tries to import to him that they're trying to stop a war, that they can't be held up while they go to Io. Io, but Holden tells them that they're free to leave whenever they want. Later, Holden goes to Avasarala in the medbay after she recovers, and she tries to tell him the importance of stopping the war, but Holden doesn't think she can do it. She then tries to tell him this is also about stopping the protomolecule, but Holden says that he's given up on that fight too. So later, when the entire crew is assembled on the command deck, Avasarala tells them everything about Ehrenreich working with Mal and how he plans to use the protomolecule hybrids to destroy Mars. So Holden reveals that they're going to Io because that's where Jules Pierre Mal's base is that has the protomolecule hybrids, and she asks what he plans to do with it when he finds it, and Amos answers they're just going to nuke the place. At first, she disagrees with this until it's revealed that Naomi gave the protomolecule to the OPA, so then she agrees they should nuke Io. Back on Earth, Ehrenreich reveals that UN intelligence uncovered the location of all of Mars's missile platforms capable of launching a first strike on Earth, and he suggests destroying them all at once in order to cripple their ability to attack Earth. He talks Gillis into it, and they prepare for the strike. Later, when Gillis is working with Anna on his speech, she hears of this and talks him out of it by saying great men are remembered for bringing about peace. So Gillis goes to Ehrenreich and orders that their missiles stand down. So later, Ehrenreich goes to Gillis and argues that great men are not made by speeches, they're made by bringing humanity together. So he convinces Gillis to go through with the attack. So they fire the missiles at the 6 platforms, but a malfunction occurs on the 6th missile, and it's due to it being powered up and powered down and powered back up again, and it's delayed by 5 seconds in destroying the final platform, so it manages to get off a missile strike that hits Earth in South America, killing over millions of people. Anna is devastated when she hears about this, but Ehrenreich just gloats to her, trying to blame her for this, saying that it's her fault for trying to talk Gillis down and essentially warning her to back off of trying to influence Gillis. So on Tycho Station, Fred Johnson has decided to reach out to Dawes and make an alliance, since Johnson has the protomolecule and Dawes has Kotazar, the scientist who is the key to unlocking it. Drummer is really upset when she hears about this, as she doesn't trust Dawes, but Johnson insists that it's important to bring all the people of the belt together to create a new Belter nation. He then sends Drummer out on a mission to retrieve the Nauvoo and retrofit it as a battleship for the belt, so the Belters gather a small fleet that Drummer commands, and she captures the Nauvoo and begins to retrofit it. On Io, Jules Pierre Mal makes friends with May and starts having doubts about what they're doing to the children, where it's obvious Strickland is a sociopath who doesn't care about them. Katoa, while doing stunts like climbing on walls, eventually has a seizure and has to be taken away. Jules Pierre Mal then calls an end to the experiments, as Strickland tries to insist it may be the only way to control the protomolecule, but Mal answers by telling him that this isn't a debate. While preparing to pack up the project, Strickland continues experimenting on Katoa in secret as he's progressing into turning into a protomolecule hybrid. May throws a fit demanding to see Katoa, and Mal tries to calm her down, but she runs off. Mal finds her near a locked door, and she says she saw Katoa's nurses go in there, so Mal has his security men drag Dr. Strickland there and forces him to open the door, and once it's open they see that Katoa killed his nurse, ripping him apart and rearranging his body parts. The way he talks makes it very clear he's in communication with the protomolecule. So Mal decides to continue with the experiments, as he can see a direct connection to the protomolecule on Venus and realizes it's its best chance for stopping it. The Rosinante encountered a debris field of Martian ships that lost a battle with the UN. Because they desperately need supplies, they decide to salvage supplies from the destroyed ships. But while scrounging for parts, they discover 3 Martian survivors barely alive, so they take them back to their med bay in order for them to recover. At first, the Martians are cooperative, but they think that they're on a Martian ship, but they soon come to realize that where they are and who Holden is, so they become more hostile and it becomes necessary to lock them in the med bay. Alex stays with them to try to calm them down, but they end up jumping him and beating him down and taking his weapon, and they proceed to try to take the ship. Two of them go to the command center while dragging Alex by gunpoint and hold Naomi hostage as well. And the third goes to the weapons locker to get more weapons, but Holden finds him there and attacks him and eventually knocks him out. Holden then goes to the command center holding them at gunpoint and a standoff ensues. However, Holden has raised the alarm, meaning that Amos is on his way, and when that happens, he's just going to kill the Martians. One of them, Ensign Sinopoli, backs down, but the other one refuses, still holding Alex at gunpoint. Bobby Draper then arrives, and she manages to talk the Martian down, and she finally surrenders her weapon just before Amos arrives. Meanwhile, Avasarala tries to find a way to convince Holden to let her send out a message to Admiral Souther, but he refuses, saying that it's too dangerous. Watching the news feed, Avasarala sees Pastor Anna at Gillis's speech and identifies her as someone she can trust, and convinces Holden to let her send a message to Pastor Anna, as they can disguise the transmission without being detected. So she sends Anna the evidence that incriminates Aaron Wright. Later, Avasarala meets with Ensign Sinopoli, where she informs them they'll all be let go if he promises to deliver the evidence of Aaron Wright to his superiors and have them transmit the message to Admiral Souther, and he agrees to do this. On Earth, Gillis prepares to make a big speech that Anna prepared for him, and Aaron Wright, being all swarmy, invites Anna to sit up front in the audience. The speech begins as Anna wrote it, as she mouths the words along with it, but then suddenly it deviates into territory of Gillis, saying what they need to do is to attack and conquer Mars, and Anna is visibly upset, as clearly that's not what she wrote, and Aaron Wright is looking very smug, indicating that he changed her speech. Later, when Gillis and Aaron Wright are alone celebrating, Anna storms in upset and yells at Gillis, saying that she was stupid to think that he could actually be a good person. Aaron Wright tries to talk her down, but Anna shuts him up, saying that he doesn't get to speak to her ever again, and then she quits. As she prepares to pack her stuff and leave, she gets a communique from Avasarala, which changes everything. On the Rocinante, the crew prepare to send a strike team to Io. Once they reach it, Bobby Draper prepares her armor and restocks her ammo, while Alex tries to tell her that the plan is, if they see any hybrids, to run, but Bobby seems intent on getting revenge. Naomi and Holden take the first step at reconciling, as Naomi thanks Holden for saving her from the Martian soldiers, and Holden admits that he understood why she did what she did, and Naomi says that she doesn't regret giving the protomolecule to the belt, but she does regret betraying him. Meanwhile, Amos has been looking out for Prax this whole time, teaching him how to shoot, and he's been getting prepared to land on Io, but Prax seems really detached, almost like he's expecting May to be dead. On Io, Strickland tries to question Katoa, who is now very far along into becoming a protomolecule hybrid. At first, Katoa is incoherent until he talks about the work. Mal asks what he means by the work, but Katoa keeps shouting that the work will be finished soon, and he gets so enraged and out of control, Strickland has to sedate him. Mal insists that he needs to talk to Katoa again, but Strickland sadly informs him that he's too far gone and that he will never speak again, so Strickland suggests converting another child into a protomolecule hybrid and says that Mei Ming shows the most promise, so Mal orders him to do so. Ensign Sinopoli returns to the MCRN ship, the Hammurabi, and gives the recording of Aaron Wright to their captain, Captain Cronino, and her first officer, Lieutenant Durant. They are skeptical about his story of meeting Holden and Avasarala, and are skeptical of the message wondering if it's some kind of trap. Sinopoli asks if Cernino will transmit the message to Admiral Souther, but she says no. They then find that the Agatha King has changed course to Io instead of going to Callisto to join the fleet, so Cernino changes course to pursue the Agatha King. On the Agatha King, Admiral Wynn confers with the senior officers who suggest that, who note that the Hammurabi has changed course to follow them, and they suggest joining with the fleet near Callisto. But instead, Admiral Wynn orders that the fleet join them at Io, and when Souther tries to ask why he wants to go to Io so badly, he refuses to answer and tells Souther not to be on the CIC unless he has specific business. Later, Lieutenant Mancuso receives a message from the Hammurabi marked specifically for Admiral Souther. He tells Schaefer about it, who gives it to Souther, and it is in fact the incriminating evidence of Ehrenreich. Schaefer suggests that he acts, as she and Mancuso has already secured the loyalty of many ships in the fleet, but he insists he needs to verify this evidence first. So he rushes in to see Cotillard and asks about the specifics in the message that Cotillard confirms, meaning he knows that the message is real. However, barging in to see Cotillard tips his hand to Wynn, who has his men grab Souther and take him to the CIC. Souther tries to reason with Wynn, but Wynn simply confines him to his quarters. However, the Hammurabi then gets in range of the Agatha King, but refuses to fire. Souther reasons that they're testing them to see if they'll fire first. Wynn orders to do just that, but then Souther moves to remove Wynn from command, and his men are quick to respond, quickly disarming Wynn's men and holding them at gunpoint. So Souther then orders that they send out a message to all the ships in the area, Earth and Mars, where he informs the UN, he tells the UN ships to break off, saying that he is placing Admiral Wynn under arrest for conspiracy to wage an illegal war. However, during his transmission, Wynn's men use this as a distraction to overpower Souther's men, and Wynn gets his gun back and shoots and kills Admiral Souther. But because of Souther's message, all of the UN ships are breaking off, so Wynn orders them to return, stating that he put down a mutiny by Admiral Souther. But 5 of the ships refuse to return, and he picks out the most important ship and orders them back, and when they refuse to return, Wynn fires on it, destroying it. Schaefer and Mancuso use this as a distraction to attack Wynn's men. However, Mancuso is killed, but Schaefer manages to kill a couple of Wynn's men until shooting at Wynn himself, who takes a couple of shots. But he manages to shoot and kill Schaefer. But he is injured in the process, with most of his men dead, and as a result, the Agatha King destroying a UN ship, all the UN ships start attacking each other. On the Hammurabi, Durant suggests firing at the UNN fleet, but Cernino says no, and instead she communicates with her fleet and orders that they not interfere, as doing so would just unite the UN ships against them, and that if they want to kill each other, that they should let them do that. However, she then communicates with the UNN fleet and tells them that if any ship identifies themselves as friendly, they will be considered to be flying under a flag of truce, and they will render assistance as needed. Wynn hears this, and it signals to him that he's outnumbered, as he would be facing not only half of the UNN fleet, but combined with all of the Martian fleet as well, meaning he'd be severely outnumbered. So in an act of defiance, he decides to launch the protomolecule hybrids to destroy Mars. Meanwhile, the Rosinante has landed on the surface of Io, and Holden, Draper, Amos, and Prax go out to assault the base. Meanwhile, Mal and Strickland prepare to begin the procedure to turn May into a hybrid, but they stop when they hear the compound is being attacked. However, while Amos is trying to break through the main door, they see all the pods containing the hybrids launch into space, and they can do nothing but look on in horror. Holden yells at Alex to shoot them down, so the Rocinante starts shooting them down. However, there are too many of them, and Alex isn't able to shoot them all down before the Rocinante runs out of ammo. Alex also points out that they weren't the only ones shooting, as the UNN and MCRN ships were shooting at them too. Naomi tracks where the pods are heading, but Avasarala reasons that they're going to Mars, and if that happens, it will turn Mars into another Eros. However, Holden orders his team into the compound and to proceed with their mission, and that perhaps they can find a way to stop the pods remotely. Meanwhile, Jules Bermal and Strickland can see the assault team coming, and that they assume that they are Martians, and Mal wants to surrender, but Strickland comes up with an alternative plan to send teams to slow the Martians down and give them time to escape. Mal asks what's to stop them from shooting their ships down, but Strickland explains that they'll say that they'll have children on board, meaning they plan on taking the children with them. Mal agrees to this, and Strickland comes up with another way to slow them down as he unleashes Katoa on them, who is now a fully blown protomolecule hybrid. However, when the pods were launched into space and the UNN and MCRN ships tried to shoot them down, one of the pods got clipped and collided with the Agatha King, infecting it with protomolecule. We then see Cotillard in the med bay when a young ensign bursts through the doors, followed by a protomolecule zombie that's chasing her. Cotillard helps take it down. She thanks him for the help, but then realizes that he's in handcuffs and demands to know what's going on. So he tells her about the protomolecule, and apparently she has been infected as well. He asks for her help to try to stop the infection, but she shoots his handcuffs off and gives him her gun and just gives up. So Cotillard goes out into the Agatha King, which is now crawling with protomolecule. On Io, Holden and his team encounter armed resistance, but Draper makes short work of them, and they proceed into the compound, only to encounter a protomolecule hybrid. Holden orders them to fall back to the Rocinante, but Draper overrides him, saying that she'll lead the hybrid away so that Holden and the others can rescue the children. Avasarala tries to persuade her not to do that, but Bobby doesn't anyway. She shoots at the hybrid, leading it to chase her, and then she leads it out into the compound. Meanwhile, Holden and the others find the nursery with proof that May is there. They look on the monitors to see Strickland leading the children away, so Amos and Prax go after them. Holden tries to disable the pods, but finds that he can't, so he sees Jules Bermal on the monitor and goes after him. Holden makes short work of Mal's security, so Mal surrenders, but informs Holden that there's no way to disable the hybrid pods from here, as the Agatha King has full control. Upon learning this, Alex proceeds to take the Razorback to the Agatha King to stop the hybrids, but Naomi doesn't let him go alone. Meanwhile, Amos and Prax catch Strickland trying to sneak out the airlock, so Strickland kills his nurse and tries to blame everything on her. Prax is reunited with his daughter, but he then tells Amos to take her and the other children away as he takes Strickland into the airlock with intent to kill him. Strickland begs for his life, and Prax is about to shoot him until Amos shows up and lowers his gun and tells Prax that he's not that guy, and then Prax leaves. However, Amos stays, and just as Strickland starts to thank him, Amos informs him that he is that guy and then shoots him in the head. On Earth, Pastor Anna takes the incriminating evidence she has on Ehrenreich to Gillis, and Gillis has Ehrenreich arrested for treason, and just as she's about to thank him for doing the right thing, he thanks her for protecting his legacy, as now the history books will blame Ehrenreich for this debacle and not him, proving just how much of a despicable man he is. Bobby Draper leads the hybrid on a chase through an industrial complex, but eventually she loses it, and as it sideswipes her, knocking her down a long distance, disabling her suit. It looms over her, testing her suit as she lays helpless, but it seems to get distracted by something happening in space, and Draper is able to regain control of her suit and shoots it in the head, killing it. And then she calls for an emergency rescue. Meanwhile, Alex and Naomi arrive at the CIC on the Agatha King, and Naomi begins the process of disabling the hybrids. Admiral Wynn is still there and tries to shoot them, but his gun is empty, so instead he taunts them about how Martians need to be exterminated. Naomi says it will be a long process disabling the pods, as she has to do it one by one, and Wynn taunts that they'll never do it in time. They then get a message from Kotar, who's in the engine room, who plans to destroy the Agatha King by initiating a core meltdown. Avasarala wants to speak to him to talk him down, but he disabled the comms from receiving any message. So he detonates the core, killing himself and leaving only a matter of minutes before the Agatha King is destroyed, and Wynn laughs maniacally at this. Alex begs Naomi to stay and finish disabling the pods, but she warns that there isn't enough time, so instead she turns all the transponders back on, and Alex and Naomi escape on the Razorback, leaving Wynn there to die as the Agatha King is destroyed. Alex tells Naomi they need to warn Mars, and she agrees but is worried that they won't be able to destroy all the pods in time. So Naomi calls Holden and Amos and tells them their plan to give the transponder codes to Fred Johnson, as he could easily destroy all the pods before they get to Mars. But she wants to make sure that all four of them agree before she does anything. They do agree, so she sends Fred Johnson the codes, and then he destroys the remaining pods. Holden then takes Jules Pierre Mal and turns him over to Avasarala. Prax is reunited with his daughter, finally. Alex helps look after Bobby as she recovers in the med bay, and Naomi and Holden make up, but Naomi informs him that it's time for her to leave the ship. Then on Venus, something launches from the surface, a giant ball that the protomolecule created, and as Amos watches it on the newsfeed, the only thing he can think to say is, "What the fuck is that?" So next, we jump ahead roughly 7 months. During that time, Avasarala has become the Secretary General of the UN after Aaron Wright was arrested for treason and Sorrento Gillis retired. Avasarala gives a big speech about how all the people of the solar system need to come together and face this new alien threat together. Meanwhile, the giant protomolecule object that had launched from Venus settles past the orbit of Uranus, where it reshapes itself into a giant ring that henceforth is known as the Ring. Earth sends a fleet of ships which include not only military but also scientists and also high-noted civilians such as poets, philosophers, religious figures, and whatnot, traveling on the Thomas Prince, which also includes Pastor Anna, who apparently was asked to attend as a favor to Avasarala. Pastor Anna is fascinated by the ring and quickly makes friends with a scientist named Kavord, where Mars sends a bunch of military vessels to investigate, which includes a ship that Bobby Draper is serving on. Also en route to the ring is the Resonate, which now is just crewed by Holden, Alex, and Amos, and they've taken on 2 passengers, a documentarian named Monica Stewart and her blind cameraman, Cohen. The Resonate is apparently being sued by Mars for possession of the Resonate, so Holden had to allow the documentary team on board in order to pay for their legal fees. Monica Stewart is attempting to make a documentary on James Holden, but he is less than forthcoming, as Holden and Amos are not happy about their presence, but consider them a necessary evil. Also going to the ring is the new flagship of the belt, the Behemoth, which is just a Nauvoo, which has been retrofitted into a warship. Commanding the Behemoth is Captain Drummer, who represents Fred Johnson, and her chief engineer is Naomi Nagata. Drummer and Naomi rekindle their friendship and get along very well, but they are forced to welcome the first officer aboard, a man named Ashford, who has a reputation of being an infamous pirate. He is part of Dawes' faction and has a deal that Johnson and Dawes struck. He gets to serve as Behemoth's first officer, and he brings with him many of Dawes' men who wear newly created OPA uniforms, including Diago, who had betrayed Naomi and Drummer before, so they are less than enthusiastic to see him, but Ashford assures them that he will behave. Ashford claims to want to serve Drummer however he can, but Drummer senses that he feels that he should be captain. When they enter the command center, they meet Grigori, who attacks Ashford as apparently there's bad blood between them. But Ashford gets the better of Grigori and gets him in a chokehold where he apologizes to Grigori and asks if he will give up and agree to work together, so Grigori agrees. Later, Naomi finds some belters selling drugs to maintenance workers, and sometime after that, an accident happens that endangers the lives of many because the worker was high. Naomi recognizes the man involved in the accident as the one who bought the drugs, so she tells Drummer about this. In response, Drummer finds the man who is selling drugs and has security beat him and drag him to the airlock, where she prepares to throw him out into space. A crowd gathers to watch this, but before she can do it, Ashford steps forward and convinces her not to, saying that they need to start acting civilized. So Drummer then addresses the crowd, saying if anyone has any drugs, they can put them in the airlock within the next 24 hours and no questions will be asked. But after that, and Ashford interrupts, saying after that, anyone caught with contraband will be detained until they return to Ceres, where they will be incarcerated. And Drummer is obviously angry, but satisfied with this. Within the UN fleet, there's a maintenance crew of electricians that leave the Thomas Prince to a smaller vessel, a science vessel called the Sun Un, in order to do repairs. Included on that crew is a new recruit named Melba, the team leader Ren, and a loudmouth named Stani. Stani babbles on, Ren can tell that Melba is very nervous and tries to calm her down. Once they're there, Ren takes Melba under his wing and helps her get through the repairs, proving that he's a kind man. However, when Ren double-checks her work, he finds that she planted a bomb on the Sun Un. When Ren says that he needs to report this, Melba warns him not to, but he doesn't seem concerned. Melba then operates some sort of implant on the roof of her mouth with her tongue that floods her body with combat drugs that make her very lethal, and she lunges at Ren and smashes his head against the wall until it's flat. After the drugs wear off, they cause her to collapse and vomit. Also heading to the ring is a belter slingshotter named Mateo. He used to be famous, pulling off some of the most daring stunts by slingshotting around planets and moons. However, since the formation of the ring, that's all anyone can ever talk about, and he doesn't get as much attention anymore. And his girlfriend threatens to leave him for his brother. So Mateo hatches a scheme to get famous again by slingshotting into the ring, and his girlfriend promises to love him again if he pulls this off. So he shoots his way towards the ring, and when the Martians threaten to shoot him down, he claims engine failure until it's too late and he's on his way to the ring, and he makes a broadcast bragging about his accomplishment. However, as soon as his ship hits the ring, it instantly decelerates very quickly as if hitting a wall, and Mateo turns into paste splattered against the wall by the massive deceleration. And because of this, the ring begins to wake up. As shortly after, on the Rosnate, as Holden is preparing to go to bed, he sees Miller sitting on his bed saying, "There's no laws on Ceres, only cops," and then Miller disappears. On the Sun Un, Melba wakes up next to Ren's dead body and starts to panic as she needs to hide what she's done before she's caught, so she crams Ren's dead body into a locker where it won't be found. She then returns to the maintenance craft where Stani is waiting for her to return to the Thomas Prince. Stani muses over the fact that Ren never showed up and at first guesses that he and Melba slept together, but he dismisses the idea as he doesn't think Ren would be able to bed a woman so young, so instead guesses that he got drunk and is somewhere sleeping one off. This speculation angers Melba, who is visibly upset over what she just did, and she tells Stanley to shut the fuck up, stating that Ren was a much better man than he'll ever be. And as she attempts to pilot the ship to dock with the Thomas Prince, she nearly crashes as she's so distracted by seeing Ren's dead body. On the Thomas Prince, Anna is socializing with some people in the mess hall, including a world-famous priest named Hector Cortez, who's giving a speech on the historical importance of the ring. while Anna's new friend, a socialite named Tilly Fagan, mocks Cortez, and Anna chastises her for drinking too much. Anna then notices Melba sitting in the mess hall. As she's visibly upset, she sees Melba walk out of the mess hall and follows her and asks her if she needs any help, as Melba is now drenched in tears, but she dismisses her, saying that she's okay. On the Rosinante, Holden tries to convince himself that seeing Miller was just a hallucination, that he's just tired, and Alex tells him about the Belter ship that entered the ring, and instead of coming out the other side, it seemed to have entered some sort of space, as if the ring is a portal. This irritates Holden, and Monica Stewart can tell that something's bothering him, but he tries to deflect. But once he's alone, Miller appears to him again speaking nonsense, but it proves to him that he's not just hallucinating. So Holden does a dozen of tests on himself in the medbay to try to see what's wrong. He tests himself for the protomolecule infections dozens of times, but every test comes out negative. While he's testing himself, Miller appears to him once again and wants to talk about some old war stories of his time as a detective on series, but Holden is too confused on how a dead man can be talking to him and starts freaking out and yelling at him, and then Amos happens to walk in on him while he's doing this, and of course Amos can't see Miller, he just sees Holden yelling at thin air, so Holden tries to assure him that everything's fine, but Amos can tell that something's wrong with Holden, so he goes to Alex about it. Meanwhile, Holden talks to Monica Stewart as a way to try to calm himself, and during the time he figures out that Miller appeared to him moments after the Belter slingshotter entered the ring. He then goes off to be alone, and Miller appears to him again, and this time Holden listens intently to Miller's war stories, but he can't figure out the point of it, as Miller keeps talking about how when you enter a room, you need to check your doors and corners. Back on the Thomas Prince, we see Melba in a locker room as she looks more determined as she thumbs her hand terminal, and we see that she does in fact operate the bomb that blows up the Sun Un. After the Sun Un is destroyed, alarms go off everywhere. We see on the Behemoth that Astrid and Drummer scramble to see what just happened. On the Rosinante, Amos bangs on Holden's door trying to get him to come out, but Holden is in the middle of talking to Miller and doesn't want to be interrupted, but Amos keeps banging on the door, and eventually Miller disappears, so Holden gives up and goes to the command center with Amos, where Alex reports a UN science vessel was just destroyed by what appears to be a bomb. Just then, Melba sends out a fake transmission of Holden confessing to destroying the Sun Un in the name of the OPA, and he threatens anyone else who interferes with the ring, as fake Holden says that it belongs to the belt. Amos and Alex wonder if this was Holden, but he assures them that he had nothing to do with any of this. Alex reports that the transmission is coming from the Rosinante and that they're locked out of all their key systems. Holden asks to talk to the other ships in the fleet, but comms are locked out as well. They still have navigation, so Alex moves the Rosinante away from the fleet. Meanwhile, on the Behemoth, as Drummer is trying to figure out what's going on, Astrid recommends to her that they destroy the Rosinante, as it's the only way to prove to the UN that they had nothing to do with the destruction of their ship. Otherwise, the UNN might destroy them as well. Naomi protests that the recording must be a fake, as Holden would never do that, but Drummer yells that she doesn't have time to verify this. Naomi protests more, to the point where Drummer orders her to be physically removed from the command center, restraining her and gagging her. On the Rosinante, Holden realizes he needs to talk to Miller, so makes a run for the airlock so he can be alone. Amos runs after him, trying to get him into a crash couch in case Alex needs to do high-speed maneuvers. However, Holden pleads with Amos to give him 1 minute alone, and Amos does. Once alone, Miller appears to Holden again and repeats the doors and corners story, and this time he says, "If you go into a room too fast, the room eats you." On the Behemoth, Drummer talks to the captain of the Thomas Prince, trying to convince him they had nothing to do with the destruction of the Sun Un, and he gives her 1 minute to prove it. So Drummer orders a missile to be fired on the Rosinante, and on the Rosinante, Alex starts high-speed maneuvering to dodge the missile, just as Holden and Amos make their way back to the command center to get into their crash couches. Holden orders Alex to go into the ring, but to do a massive deceleration just before entering so that they can enter the ring at a slow speed. Alex refuses, saying that will kill them, but Holden pleads with Amos and tells him that Miller told him to do this, and Amos backs Holden up, so Alex executes the maneuver. The entire crew pass out from the massive deceleration, and Holden wakes up to discover that the Rocinante is inside the ring space with the missile just stuck, frozen off their bow. The Rocinante crew then gather, trying to figure out what's going on. Alex reports that the missile is still moving, but just extremely slow, and it's no longer headed toward them. It's on a course to a mystery station in the middle of the ring space that they now find themselves in. The Belter slingshotter ship is also caught in the same current, being dragged to the station in the center. Holden makes it clear that their top priority is to regain control of the Rocinante, and Alex is still puzzled on how they lost control in the first place, but Amos noticed Monica Stewart's cameras filming him, and he starts to realize what happened. And then he attacks Cohen, accusing him of sabotaging the Rocinante. Monica Stewart yells and proclaims that they're innocent, but Cohen then confesses to placing a piece of equipment on the Rocinante that he thought was only supposed to spy on them, but apparently was given to him by Melba and was used for her to gain control of their ship. Later, the Martians send in a probe into the ring space, and when it returns safely, the MCRNs send in their ship into the ring space. They then fire several more probes. One gradually speeds up until it is grabbed by the ring space in the same way the missile in the Belter slingshot was. Thus, they determine there's a speed limit in the ring space and that ships can safely travel without being grabbed. So they accelerate to just below the speed limit, and Holden orders Alex to match their speed in order to stay ahead of them. They also fire another probe that goes to the edge of the ring space and it vanishes, which leads Alex to suggest that they avoid the edge, as that might be a good idea. So that leads Holden with a conundrum, as if they change course, the Martians will catch them, but if they continue straight, they will eventually hit the edge and vanish. Holden then goes off to be alone, hoping Miller will reappear, while Alex tries to regain control of the Rocinante. And Amos interrogates the documentarians. His interrogations is less than gentle, as he threatens to kill Monica, and it ends with him shoving them both into an airlock, and they call to Alex for help. However, Amos doesn't intend to kill them, as he tells them to get their space suits on, as he's just throwing them out into space so that the Martians can pick them up. Alex asks Monica to tell the Martians that they're innocent, but the look she gives him doesn't give him confidence that she'll do that. On the Behemoth, Drummer has to order Naomi to work on repairs, as she's outraged that Drummer tried to destroy the Rocinante. As Naomi works on the repairs, Ashford informs her that the Martians sent a ship into the ring and then sent a skiff back out to tell everyone else to just sit on their hands as they arrest Holden, but Drummer isn't going to do that and is ordering the Behemoth inside the ring. And when the Behemoth enters the ring, Drummer gives a huge inspirational speech about how Belters are strong and how they will prevail, and everyone thumps and cheers along with her as the Behemoth enters the ring. However, once inside the ring, Naomi tries to take a skiff to go back to the Rocinante, but Drummer had locked all the skiffs down and discovers her. She feels hurt that Naomi would sneak off like that, but ultimately lets her take the skiff and leave. On the Thomas Prince, they've decided to go into the ring as well, but Avasarala sends a message telling all civilians to evacuate to other ships that will take them back to Titan. In the mess hall, Anna talks to Hector Cortez about how disappointing it is that they don't get to go into the ring, but Tilly shows up and she seems very confident that she won't be leaving the Thomas Prince. Anna later presses her and learns that she blackmailed the ship's first officer with a job opportunity in her parents' company in order to let her stay on the ship, so she asks Tilly to pull strings for her as well, and she agrees. Anna then goes to Cortez, telling him that he can stay as well, but he doesn't want to stay as he's terrified, and he leaves. Meanwhile, Melba is with her team, Stani and Soledad, as they all know now that Ren is dead, as he was on the Sun Un when it exploded. They also mention that they're offering a triple hazard pay to anyone who wants to stay on board the Thomas Prince as it goes into the ring, to which Soledad and Stani refuse. However, after Melba talks to them, Stani seems to doubt James Holden was ever a hero and thinks of him now as a terrorist, which pleases Melba as it shows that her plan to discredit him worked. However, Soledad then brings up that once the Martians catch Holden, they'll find out what really happened, which worries her as her whole plan could fall apart. So Melba decides to stay on the Thomas Prince to try to get to Holden before anyone else does. Anna spots Melba and they have a friendly chat where Anna asks Melba why she decided to stay to go into the ring, but she only answers that it was because of the hazard pay. In flashbacks, we discover that Melba is in fact Clarissa Mal, daughter of Jules Pierre Mal and sister to Julie Mal. We see in flashbacks that Clarissa wanted desperately to win her father's affections, but he didn't care much for her and favored Julie instead, thus making it clear that Clarissa is trying to get revenge on Holden for ruining her father in an attempt to prove herself to him. On the Rocinante, after Miller doesn't appear to Holden orders Alex to slow the Rocinante down and let the Martians catch them, as they'll come on board and see that they've been sabotaged and thus it will clear their names. However, Alex warns that while it will clear them of the terrorist attack, the Martians will confiscate the Rocinante, and Holden concedes that but says that it's better than dying. But once Holden is alone again, Miller finally reappears to him and asks why he's slowing down, telling Holden that he needs to go to the station in the center. When he asks why, Miller just says that Miller has an investigation to solve and Holden needs answers. So Holden sneaks off the ship in a spacesuit and shoots off on his own towards the station in the center. The Thomas Prince then enters the ring space, and Anna is with Kavord on the operational deck, and she's completely in awe of the ring space and caught in the moment. An officer on board who's the same faith as her goes to her for comfort as he's obviously terrified of the ring space, but Anna is too distracted by the ring space and she ignores him. This man later shoots himself out of fear and kills himself, and when Anna finds out about this, she feels incredibly guilty for not doing her job, which is to comfort other people. She then leads his memorial service where she tries to comfort everyone and tells them to look out for each other. Tilly goes to Anna after the service and tells her about how she spotted Clarissa Mal, whom she knows from being friends with the Mal family. Tilly is worried about Clarissa, thinking that she's hiding from the authorities because of Jules Pierre's Mal's disgrace, so Anna suggests to Tilly that she go to her and offer her help. Meanwhile, Melba tries to figure out a way to get to the Rocinante, so she plots to steal a mech suit. On the Behemoth, Ashford chastises Drummer for letting Naomi go, and Drummer runs off to the cargo bay to retrofit old farming equipment into a probe as she's angry and wants to get away from Ashford. Once she's gone, Diego goes to Ashford and suggests that Ashford should be in command and not Drummer, and Ashford scolds him for that and threatens him not to speak ill of their captain like that. Meanwhile, Holden continues to talk to Miller as he makes his way through the ring space to the station in the middle. The Martians send a skiff to chase Holden, which has a team of Marines that include Bobby Draper. The Marines try to talk to Holden, but he doesn't reply, so Bobby tries talking to him, and he does answer, but he's talking to Miller at the same time, whom of course they can't hear, so he sounds crazy. Bobby asks him to turn around, but he refuses. When Holden approaches the station, it opens up a corridor and lets him enter. Miller leads him through the station and explains to him that the protomolecule is manipulating his brain to make him think that he's talking to Miller. They reach a large open room where there's a pillar in the middle and a space missing in between this pillar. Miller tells Holden to put his hand in there to complete the circuit. He suggests doing so will activate the station and allow him to access its records. Holden doesn't trust Miller and fears doing so might kill everyone, so he asks about Julie because he wants to make sure that this is Miller he's talking to and not some proto-molecule trick trying to get his entire species killed. But this upsets Miller and he disappears. When he reappears, he tells a story about the last moments he had with Julie on Eros before he died, saying how scared he was and she held his hand to comfort him. This helps Holden trust Miller, but just then the Martian Marines catch up to Holden and point their guns at him and order him to surrender. Bobby tries to relate with him and talk him down, but Holden insists that he needs to complete the circuit, and he moves to do so anyway, and all the Marines, including Bobby, fire at him. But all their bullets get stopped by the station in the same manner the missile and the Belter ships were grabbed, and another pillar comes to life and moves quickly towards the Martians. The lieutenant throws a grenade at the pillar and then explodes. The station responds to this by changing the speed limit in the ring space to the speed the grenade was going, which instantly stops all the ships in the space. It also grabs the lieutenant and hovers him in mid-air until the station rips him apart limb by limb and absorbs his remains in the floor. As Bobby and the Marines watch in horror, Miller reappears to Holden and urges him to complete the circuit, so he does so. As soon as Holden's hand enters the pillar, he experiences a series of images where the events of the protomolecule that led to this moment play out in reverse. And he then sees the ring space is actually a series of gates that lead to other solar systems throughout the galaxy. He watches as the gates begin to close as the station seems to be fighting an infection, and the station reaches out and destroys entire solar systems very easily. This sight makes Holden scream silently, and he comes out of his vision to collapse unconscious to the ground. Draper and her Marines pick up Holden and head back to their skiff. However, before they blast off, Draper has one of her Marines shoot a test rocket in order to discover the speed limit has changed, and they adjust their speed accordingly. Once they return, they discover pretty much every ship in the ring space has been stopped and grabbed by the station, and for the ships that are still able to move, it would take 7 months to get to the exit on the ring space going at the new speed limit. But that's not the worst of it. The bigger issue is all the ships experienced sudden deceleration, meaning a lot of people died depending on how fast the ship was going. Pretty much anyone not strapped into a crash couch died or was severely injured. On the Thomas Prince, Anna was sleeping in her room, but even then she was banged up and experiences some pain. However, when she leaves her room, she finds a scene of horror as there are dead bodies floating everywhere, and those who have survived are severely injured. Anna goes to the med bay to try to help, but the medic said that those with internal bleeding are as good as dead. Anna is confused by this, but the medic explains that because they're in 0G now, blood pools in 0G and injuries aren't able to drain and heal. Anna goes looking for injured people to help, and she finds Melba, whose arm is broken, and she takes her to the medbay where she receives treatment. Anna then gets a call from Tilly, who sounds severely hurt, so Anna goes out looking for her. When she finds her, Tilly is impaled on a pipe hanging from the ceiling. She immediately calls for help and then tries to comfort Tilly. However, Tilly tells Anna that she went to Clarissa Mount to try to stop her, and that Clarissa tried to kill her, and that Clarissa was the one who destroyed the Sun Un, and that she's now trying to kill James Holden. And then Tilly dies before the medics can help her. Anna then frantically searches for Melba and is able to get her tracking info and eventually finds her just as she's preparing to leave the ship in a mech suit. Anna calls out to her but is unable to stop her from leaving the ship. When the sudden deceleration happened, Naomi was on her skiff, which was, like all other ships, came to a complete stop and was grabbed by the ring. Thankfully, though, she was strapped into her crash couch, so she experienced only minor discomforts. However, then she tries to get her ship operational again, and it explodes and starts a fire. So Naomi quickly puts on her spacesuit and jumps out into space and heads over to the Rocinante. Once she arrives, she finds it as a ghost ship with no one answering her calls. She eventually finds Alex floating unconscious in the mess hall. He wakes up briefly and Naomi asks where Holden is, and Alex answers that he isn't here. And then he mutters something about Miller, which just confuses her, and then he loses consciousness again. So she takes him to the med bay to heal. She also finds Amos injured floating in the engine room and also brings him to the med bay to heal. When Amos wakes up, he's surprised to find Naomi there and asks if she's just there to help or if she's there to stay, and she answers that she's here to stay. Later, as Naomi tries to repair the Rocinante, she's attacked by Melba in a mech suit who's broken onto the Rocinante. Naomi tries to run away from her, but the mech suit gives Melba the advantage, and she eventually gets Naomi in a chokehold and demands to know where Holden is. Naomi tells her even if Holden were there and even if she knew where he was, that she wouldn't tell her, and so Melba proceeds to choke her. But then she's stopped when Anna suddenly appears behind her and tasers Melba, who collapses onto the ground, and then Anna asks Naomi if she's okay. On the Behemoth, Ashford was talking to Drummer in a cargo bay at the time of the deceleration incident, and both of them ended up being trapped on either side of a farming equipment when the slow zone hit. So they're in a bit of a quandary as the maglocks are stuck so they can't move the equipment up, and if they move it forward, it would crush Drummer, and if they move it backward, it will crush Ashford. After several failed attempts to free themselves and some bonding over singing, Drummer finally decides to move the equipment forward, which crushes her and frees Ashford. Ashford appreciates the sacrifice, and once he gets a status report from Grigori, he orders that they spin the drum so they can create artificial gravity so that Drummer and all the other injured can heal. Grigori warns that spinning the drum could tear the ship apart, but Ashford decides it's worth the risk, so they spin the drum and it's successful, and Grigori reports that they have 1/10 G, so Ashford then contacts all the other ships in the ring space and invites them all to send their injured on board the Behemoth so that they can heal. So, most of the people in the ring space congregate on the Behemoth to concentrate on the relief effort. The Martian Marines take Holden to the Behemoth where he's interrogated by a Martian captain, but Holden refuses to say anything until he can speak to his crew. Ashford then tries talking to Holden and promises him if he talks, he'll help him talk to his crew. So Holden tells him about Miller and the vision he had on the station, saying that the station is capable of wiping out entire solar systems, so he suggests they leave immediately. Ashford leaves and talks to the Martians and tells them that Holden is crazy, and the Martians agree to turn him over to Ashford to be put in a holding cell on the Behemoth. Ashford then demands that the Martians give up their weapons, including their battle armor, in order to gain access to the Behemoth. Bobby Draper refuses, but her captain orders her to do so. On the Rocinante, Alex and Amos have recovered, and Alex works with Naomi to help repair the Rocinante, while Amos keeps guard on Melba, who's locked in the med bay with an inhibitor attached to her that prevents her from operating her combat implants. Amos suggests that they kill Melba, but Anna stops him from doing it. Amos says that she won't be grateful for her mercy, but Anna replies that it's not about her, it's about them. Alex and Naomi get the Resonate mostly functional, and they discover everyone has congregated on the behemoth and that Holden is there, so Naomi wants to go over there to check on them, but Alex insists on going with her, so they all decide to go. Once there, they turn Melba over to the OPA, who promise to lock her up, but Diago arrests Naomi for desertion and takes her to see Ashford. Amos, Alex, and Naomi go to the med bay. Amos, Alex, and Anna go to the med bay where Anna helps in the relief effort, and Amos starts to be fascinated by her compassion, and they start to bond. When Naomi is brought to Ashford, he orders her to help in repairs of the power grid. When Naomi refuses, saying she wants to see Drummer and Holden, Ashford promises she can see them once she helps in the repairs. So she agrees, and once the repairs are done, she visits Drummer, who has been paralyzed from her injuries, but she currently is trying to build a mech suit that would allow her to move around despite her paralysis. Naomi agrees to help build it, and once they're done, she takes her to see Holden. Holden is relieved that the crew's okay, and he warns that the station is dangerous. On the Thomas Prince, Kavold comes up with an idea to try to use the behemoth's powerful tight beam to get a message out through the ring, but it doesn't work. However, Kavold comes up with another idea to try to learn more about how this space works, and his idea involved blowing up a skiff with a nuke. Ashford agrees to the experiment. However, after it's executed, they detect a massive buildup in the station similar to a railgun powering up. Ashford believes that the station is preparing to destroy Earth and all of humanity, so he meets with the MCRN and UN leaders and suggests that they use the behemoth's comm laser to destroy the entrance to the ring, which would effectively trap them all there, which is a death sentence, but in doing so would save the human race, and Ashford believes that's not a bad way to die. However, Naomi leaves Holden alone so he can talk to Miller, and when Miller does appear, he tells Holden what to do, and Holden explains it to Drummer and Naomi that they need to power down all the ships in the ring space, which will prove to the station that they aren't a threat, and Miller will be able to disable its defenses. Drummer calls Ashford and starts to tell him about his plan, but it becomes apparent to her that he's not on board with it and he doesn't believe Holden, and further, it's apparent he's sending men after them. So Holden, Drummer, and Naomi come up with a plan to disable the behemoth's reactor by going to the reactor control and doing it manually. Holden contacts Alex and Amos and tells them to use Monica Stewart's ability to broadcast to get everyone else in the ring space to shut down the reactor cores as well. Alex is concerned that it will be a really tough sell, so Amos comes up with the idea to recruit Pastor Anna for the task, as she's good with people. So she's on board with it, and with her help they get Monica Stewart on board with it as well. Meanwhile, with some help from Drummer's allies, she, Holden, and Naomi successfully take the reactor control and try to disable the reactor. However, when Ashford finds out what they're doing, he sends Diago after them to stop them. Naomi eventually discovers that Ashford is trying to destroy the ring with the comm laser, which terrifies Holden, as he declares that doing so will prove to the station that humanity is a threat, and the station will wipe out all of humanity everywhere. Again, Drummer tries contacting Ashford, and they try to warn him that destroying the ring will just bring about the destruction of humanity, but Ashford doesn't believe them and thinks that they're just cowardly trying to protect their own lives. Then Pastor Anna starts up her transmission, pleading with the people in the ring space to disable the reactor cores. This seems to convince Grigori, who challenges Ashford on what if he's wrong. He then speaks to everyone else in the control room, saying that if there's a chance to save their lives, they should try. But then Ashford kills him and then asks if anyone else wants to debate him. The MCRN captain backs Ashford and says that she'll send her Marines to stop Anna's transmission, so Bobby Draper is ordered to lead a team to stop them. However, when they go to retrieve their battle armor, they find that they've already been taken. We then see that it was Diago and his men who took the Martian battle armor, and they use it to easily take the reactor control room. The battle suits are far more of a match for Holden, Naomi, and Drummer, so they are forced to retreat in the elevator shaft, and they try to make their way upward toward the command center. Meanwhile, Draper and her Marines approach Alex and Amos and order them to stop the broadcast. Amos tells Alex that he doesn't care if Bobby is his friend. If she tries to stop them, he's going to kill her. So Alex throws down his gun and comes out to talk. He tries to tell Draper that they need to do this, otherwise they're all dead. Draper suggests Holden isn't himself anymore, but Alex argues that Holden's going around risking his life trying to save everyone, and that sounds just like the Holden he knows. The other Martian Marines get sick of Bobby Draper giving in to the Rosinante crew, and they decide to attack Alex, and when Bobby tries to stop them, they attack her too. Bobby manages to knock out one of the Marines, but not before getting shot. Meanwhile, the other Marine gets the better of Alex, but that leaves Amos with a clear shot, and he kills that Marine. Draper then gives the all-clear sign, and she and Alex grab the guns and take them to Amos, where Draper collapses to the ground from her wound. Meanwhile, Ashford brings extra electricians to the command center to try to get the laser comm ready in time, and this includes Melba. However, she shocks herself and is not operating at peak efficiency, and when Ashford asks about it, she tells him that her chemical restraint is hindering her, so he removes it for her. She then asks if doing one good deed before death could redeem oneself, and Ashford believes that it can. Meanwhile, Diago and his men in the battle armor start catching up to Holden, Naomi, and Drummer, so Holden and Drummer slow down to try to stop them by throwing grenades at them. The grenades disable two of them, but Diago is still coming at them. So Drummer tells Holden to go on without him, as she plans to stay behind and sacrifice herself to ensure that the grenades get Diago. And as she's prepared to make that sacrifice, the elevator suddenly moves at lightning speed to smash into Diago, killing him. And it's clear that Naomi was the one who sent it. Drummer laughs out loud, but tells Holden and Naomi to go on without her, as she's too hurt to continue. Meanwhile, a large group of armed men start attacking Pastor Anna's position, so Alex and Amos fight back, trying to hold that position. In the command center, it's reported that all of the other ships are powering down the reactors, but Ashford still refuses and instead tries to fire the comm laser, but it misses, and apparently the targeting needs to be realigned. Then Holden and Naomi make their way just outside the command center, but the corridor is so heavily protected by armed men, so Holden and Naomi throw down their weapons and make a plea with Ashford that violence isn't the way to solve the situation. It doesn't work, and Ashford orders his men to shoot them. However, Melba hears this, and she is convinced by Holden's argument, so she activates her implant and attacks Ashford. And as his men fire on her, she manages to disable the behemoth's reactor. And doing so does have the effect that Holden wanted, as the station completely powers down, but more than that, it reveals its true nature, and thousands of gates to other solar systems across the entire galaxy open up, giving humanity access to over 1,300 habitable solar systems. We then get a montage where we see Ashford in the med bay healing as Drummer brings him a drink to try to make peace. Anna stays with Melba as she heals and holds her hand in a gesture of forgiveness. And we see Naomi and Amos working together once again to fix up the Rosinante. We also see Avasarala back on Earth looking at an image of the ring space, which now gives humanity access to thousands of other worlds. Holden's narration indicates that another blood-soaked gold rush is coming. Holden then talks about how whoever built the protomolecule in ring space has been wiped out, and he speculates on what possibly could have killed them, and Miller tells him that that's what he'd like to know, and then he states that he's going to need a ride. We then see Holden going through one of the ring gates into the great unknown. So, that is it for my very long, detailed recap of Season 3 of The Expanse. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you know You are now prepared for Season 4, which I personally am very excited to see as we find out what happens to humanity now that there are thousands of habitable worlds at their fingertips. And what happens to Holden specifically once the Rosnate goes through these ring gates. I just cannot wait to find out. So be sure to check out my channel as I cover Season 4 of The Expanse in great detail with an overall season review and individual episode reviews for every episode of the season, live discussion videos with other YouTubers, and book-to-show comparison videos that compare each episode to the source material. And I also cover many other shows like Star Trek, Mr. Robot, and more, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks so much for watching.